All right, we're going to talk about transformations, and these transformations are things that we have talked about before. All right, so we have a vertical translation or a vertical shift of y equals f of x plus b. If b is positive, we're shifting up. If b is negative, we're shifting down. We have a horizontal shift of y equals f of x minus d. Okay, if it's x minus d, we are going to shift right. If it's x plus d, we are going to shift left. So the first one here, so we're going to look here, and we're going to draw up x squared. So we have a graph over here, and the first thing we're going to do is put in x squared. And I'm going to use blue here to be my regular graph. Okay, so one. So roughly looks like that. Okay, probably off a little bit because I'm drawing by hand. Okay, so now I'm going to graph x squared plus 6. So the first thing I know is that I'm going to shift it up 6 units. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And this whole graph is going to shift up 6 units. And that's what my graph is going to look like. Okay? Now, we have reflections. So reflections, I have an x-axis and a y-axis reflection. So I have an x-axis reflection if I have y equals negative f of x. So if I'm negating the whole thing, I'm going to have a y-axis reflection. So I'm going to take it where it's at, flip it over the y-axis. I have x-axis. I have a y-axis reflection. If I plug in a negative x, I'm going to have a y-axis reflection. So now I'm going to take my graph here and I'm going to graph y equals negative quantity x squared plus 6. So what's going to happen is it's going to take all these values and reflect them down here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I have a value here. And there's my graph of y equals negative quantity x squared plus 6 quantity. Okay, so what that's going to do is that's going to reflect it down. We have a vertical stretch or shrink if I have a of f of x. So y equals a of f of x. We call it a stretch if the absolute value of a is greater than 1. And remember, we're really working, if a was negative, that's just a reflection. Okay, so that's just an x-axis reflection. So if a is greater than 1, we have a stretch. A stretch means it's going to become closer to that y-axis symmetry. I have a shrink if a is between 0 and 1. So if a is less than 1, I'm going to have a shrink. I'm going to get closer to a horizontal item. We have a horizontal stretch and shrink if we have y equals f of cx. If c is greater than 1, I have a shrink, okay? So think of it like if I'm going this way, I have a shrink and that it's pulling it back closer to my y vertical axis. I have a stretch if c is less than 1 but greater than 0. So I have a stretch or I get closer to the x-axis. So these are going to be flipped of each other, okay? So now we're going to graph y equals 2 times the quantity x squared plus 6. So I'm basing everything off this original graph, okay? So now it says, okay, this tells me I'm shifting it up so many, and this would actually be, let's just go 2x, let's do it that way. So 2x squared plus 6, because if I do it the other way, I have 12, and I don't have a big enough graph here, okay? So I'm going to go up 6, okay? Now I have this vertical stretch of 2. So now I have a stretch of 2, so I'm getting closer to that y or that vertical axis, okay? So that's kind of dealing with vertical stretches, shrinks, horizontal stretches, shrink, reflection, translation. We have talked about this a lot. We've done this in Algebra 2. So it's just kind of a brief review on transformations.